In the heart of a small Wild West town, under the relentless sun of a hot summer day, life bustled with a unique energy. Dust swirled around the wooden buildings, dancing in the warm breeze that carried the sounds of laughter, horse hooves, and the occasional creak of old wagons. The blazing sun cast long shadows on the sun-baked ground, which was covered in tiny pebbles and dirt from countless boots. Children played along the streets, their cheerful shouts bouncing off the walls of the general store and the saloon. A few women gathered outside the post office, exchanging stories and news while keeping an eye on their playful little ones. Their bonnets fluttered gently in the breeze, a splash of color against the faded wood of the storefronts. Men traded tall tales and shared a laugh as they leaned against hitching posts, eyeing any newcomers with both curiosity and suspicion. At the edge of this lively scene stood a modest town hall, its paint peeling but full of charm. The building hummed with purpose, a place where lives changed and decisions were made. It was here that heavy expectations often clashed with the dreams of individuals seeking a better life. This building would soon bear witness to a consequential event, a marriage that many whispered about, though few fully understood. On one side of Town Hall stood the rancher, known to most as Jake. He hobbled slightly as he approached, leaning on his wooden crutches with an air of confidence that masked his struggles. The town had learned to respect him over time, not just for his determination, but also for his skills as a rancher despite his physical challenges. His eyes held depth that spoke of unspoken stories and unfulfilled dreams. On the opposite side stood Mei Ling, a widow who had recently arrived in town. Her presence brought whispers among the townsfolk. Dressed in a simple dress, she wore her long black hair tied back neatly, yet there was an undeniable strength in her posture. The beauty of her features contrasted sharply with the hardships she had faced in her life. Strangers gazed at her curiously. She was different, intriguing, yet unfamiliar. As they stood waiting in front of the town hall's doors, neither Jake nor May could have guessed how their lives would intertwine in unexpected ways. The townspeople gathered around them like moths to a flame, their chatter filling the air with speculation. The hot summer sun beat down on all present, mirroring the heat of judgment radiating from those who could not fully understand these two individuals, both forced into circumstances that would challenge their perceptions of love and partnership. The day felt monumental, filled with whispers that mingled with excitement, dread, and hope for what lay ahead. This was not just another summer day. It was the beginning of a story both complicated and compelling. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the town, Jake stood outside the town hall, feeling a mix of anticipation and anxiety. The wooden crutches beneath his arms felt both familiar and cumbersome as he shifted his weight, glancing at the gathering crowd. He was known for his strong spirit and unwavering work ethic, despite the challenges he faced due to his disability. A rancher by trade, Jake had spent countless hours tending to cattle and repairing fences with grit and determination. The townsfolk respected him, but there were also whispers about him being a burden rather than a provider. Jake's thoughts drifted back to the days before his accident, a time when he could run freely across open fields, feeling invincible. However, after a terrible fall that left him reliant on crutches, life had changed drastically. Some days felt heavier than others as he grappled with feelings of inadequacy, yet within him burned a desire to prove that he could still make a life worth living. On the other side of Town Hall stood Mei Ling, her heart pounding at her new reality. The whispers in town about her arrival had only intensified since her forced marriage was announced. Though outwardly calm, she fought against fear and uncertainty simmering within. Her journey to this moment was complicated. Escaping from a past marked by loss and hardship had not been easy. She felt like an outsider in this vibrant community where everyone seemed to know each other well. May's eyes reflected resilience forged through struggle. Orphaned at a young age in her homeland, she had faced trials that left deep scars, yet also built strength inside her. After losing her husband under tragic circumstances, she was brought here against her will. expected to marry someone she barely knew for the sake of societal norms. As the two characters finally stood face to face, Jake tall but leaning on his crutches, May petite yet radiating strength, an unspoken understanding passed between them amidst the murmuring crowd around them. Both wanted something more than what fate had dealt them. They sought respect and connection in a world that often judged them too quickly. "Are you ready?" Jake asked gently, breaking the silence while looking into May's eyes with sincerity. "I suppose we must be," she replied with a small smile that hinted at hope underneath her apprehension. In their hearts, both felt the weight of expectations pressing down on their shoulders. However, they were determined to navigate this path together. Unbeknownst to them, their struggles would soon turn into something compellingly beautiful as they fought against the judgments of society while discovering their own truths along the way. As the sun continued its descent, casting a warm glow over the town, the air was thick with unspoken tension. Mei Ling's heart raced as she stood beside Jake, grappling with her thoughts about the marriage that loomed ahead. The whispers and judgment of the townsfolk felt like a weight on her shoulders, pressing down harder with every passing moment. She had been thrust into this situation by forces beyond her control, ensnared by societal expectations that dictated her life choices. Back in her homeland, she was free to follow her own dreams, but those days vanished after losing her husband. It was a tragedy that marked her soul deeply and altered her fate in ways she never wanted. With no family left to turn to and lingering debts from her late husband's affairs, May faced the harsh reality of survival. When the local authorities suggested this marriage to Jake as a solution, a way to provide stability for both, there seemed to be no choice but to comply. The townspeople saw it as practical. Two individuals with burdens coming together might ease each other's struggles. Yet for May, marrying Jake felt like another form of captivity. As they stood together outside the town hall, she couldn't help but feel trapped between two worlds, one pulling her back home and the other forcing her forward into an uncertain future. "What if I can't meet their expectations?" she thought as doubt rushed through her mind. Jake sensed May's hesitance and understood that their union was not just about them. It represented something much larger in the eyes of the community. He had heard murmurs about how his physical limitations made him an unsuitable partner for a woman of May's background. As he looked at her now, he realized they were both pawns in a game dictated by society, where status and strength were prized above all else. However much they might want to unite freely, traditions and pressures stood rigidly in their way. "May," he said softly, trying to break through the silent tension surrounding them, "I know this isn't what either of us wanted." "I never chose this," she replied sharply, feeling anger rise within her as she glanced at the crowd waiting expectantly behind them. He studied her face closely, recognizing that beneath the anger was fear, a fear of becoming trapped in another cage built by expectations. He sighed heavily. "Neither did I." At that moment, an understanding passed between them. They were both victims of circumstance in their own rights, but each perception only fueled their anxiety as they prepared for the ceremony ahead. Would they be able to break free from societal constraints? Could they find common ground amid their struggles? As they exchanged glances filled with uncertainty, they knew it wouldn't be easy navigating these waters together, where love was supposed to thrive, but often felt overshadowed by obligation instead. As the ceremony began, Jake took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. He leaned on his crutches, feeling both exposed and determined. While many in the town viewed him solely through the lens of his disability, he had developed hidden strengths over the years that defined who he was beyond his physical limitations. For instance, Jake's keen understanding of animals had earned him respect among fellow ranchers. He could sense when cattle were agitated or uneasy, often calming them with just his voice and gentle gestures. This skill came from countless hours spent alone on the ranch, learning to communicate with nature in ways that transcended words. It was this intuitive connection that allowed him to manage his land effectively, despite needing assistance to walk. In addition to his affinity for animals, Jake had cultivated a remarkable ability to solve problems creatively. When faced with obstacles on the ranch, whether it was fixing a broken fence or finding lost livestock, he relied on inventive solutions rather than brute strength. His mind was sharp and resourceful, often devising plans that others might overlook. While some might have dismissed him due to his crutches, Jake's determination to find alternate paths forward made him a force in his own right. As he stood at the altar, watching Mei Ling's expression shift between hope and uncertainty, Jake felt a swell of resolve within him. Perhaps this marriage could be an opportunity for both of them to discover strengths they hadn't yet realized. After all, he understood what it meant to be judged without being seen. Would Mei's resilience, forged through her own hardships, complement his own? "Let's make this work," he thought silently as he caught her eye again. "We can find our way together." The thought brought him a flicker of optimism amid the anxiety surrounding their union. Jake's thoughts wandered back to the nights spent under starlit skies on the ranch. He remembered how those moments taught him patience and introspection. They provided clarity when life felt overwhelming. As Mei stood beside him, he sensed she carried similar burdens and dreams within her heart. "Maybe," he whispered softly enough for only her to hear, "we can support each other." Mei turned toward him slightly, her brow furrowed but curiosity flickering in her eyes. "Support?" she echoed, taken aback yet intrigued by the concept. "Yes," Jake replied earnestly as their fingers brushed against one another briefly. "You may not see it yet, but I believe we both have strengths waiting to be revealed." The slight smile that crossed Mei's lips sparked something new within Jake. It ignited hope that perhaps they could forge an alliance built on mutual respect and understanding rather than mere obligation. With their combined courage and hidden talents just beginning to surface, they stood poised at the threshold of change, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead with resilience and determination. As Mei Ling stood beside Jake, her mind drifted back to her life before arriving in this unfamiliar town. Once she had lived in a vibrant village where the streets were filled with the sounds of laughter and the aroma of delicious food being prepared by loving hands. She remembered the bustling market where colorful fabrics and fresh produce were sold, as well as the joyful gatherings with family and friends during festivals. But all that changed when tragedy struck. Orphaned at a young age, Mei was taken in by her uncle, who raised her with care but also imposed strict expectations. Her dreams of becoming a skilled seamstress faded as she learned to prioritize the needs of her family. Yet she held on to hope, crafting beautiful garments for herself and others, pouring her heart into the fabric with each stitch. She dreamed of starting her own shop one day, where she could share her creativity with the world. But everything changed when she married a man she barely knew. Her husband was kind but often distant, caught up in his struggles and unable to provide the emotional support she craved. It was only after his untimely death that she realized how alone she truly was. With debts looming over her family and no other options available, Mei was forced to leave her home, spiriting away to an unknown place when the marriage proposal to Jake came through the authorities. Now, standing at the altar, she felt a mix of fear and resentment. "How did I end up here?" she thought as doubt washed over her. While she understood that this marriage was meant to offer stability for both herself and Jake, it felt like yet another cage. Would she ever have the chance to pursue her dreams again? Or was this union only another obligation that would stifle her? Mei's heart raced as she glanced at Jake, feeling that he bore his own burdens. She wondered if he had any idea how trapped she felt. The whispers from the townsfolk echoed around them, judgments based on appearances and assumptions rather than understanding their stories. Will he see me for who I truly am? May pondered. She sensed that Jake might be different from those who only focused on his crutches. Perhaps they could find solace in each other's struggles. Perhaps he might understand her longing for freedom and creativity. In that moment of hesitation, May felt a small spark of hope ignite within her soul. Maybe there was a chance for their lives to intertwine beyond societal expectations, allowing them both to explore their potential together rather than apart. Yet uncertainty lingered in the air like a thick fog as they prepared to exchange vows. The future seemed murky, but as she took a deep breath and met Jake's gaze again, she found a flicker of determination rising within her, a desire to reclaim her sense of self amid the chaos. Maybe, May whispered softly to herself, this marriage could become a new beginning. The ceremony had ended, and Mei Ling found herself stepping into a new life that felt as foreign as the land around her. As she entered the small ranch house with Jake, she was greeted by an odd mix of warmth and unease. The place was modest, but had its own charm, filled with rustic furniture and the earthy smell of hay and leather. It should have felt welcoming, yet May felt like an intruder in a world that was still unfamiliar to her. "Make yourself at home," Jake said, his voice steady but soft. May nodded, a hesitant smile tracing her lips. She pushed aside the feelings of doubt flooding her mind and began to explore their surroundings. Jake watched her move about the room, noting how her fingers brushed against the fabric scattered here and there. A few blankets draped over a chair, scraps of material from his late wife's sewing projects lying on a shelf. "I can clean that up later," he said, noticing the way she glanced over them. "Oh no," May exclaimed quickly. "I can help." She bent down to pick up some fabric scraps, surprised at how comfortable she felt doing something so simple. "I used to sew back home," she added, her heart racing as she opened up a little. "Did you?" Jake's interest piqued. "What did you make?" "Clothes, mostly," May replied shyly, "and sometimes gifts for friends." A flicker of pride lit her eyes as she shared this small piece of her life. As they moved to the kitchen area, Jake made himself busy preparing a simple meal of stew. He absent-mindedly searched for ingredients while trying to maintain conversation. "I hope you like it," he mentioned over his shoulder. May hesitated. "I'm not used to this kind of food." She watched him stir the pot carefully, realizing how different their meals would be from what she was accustomed to. While in her homeland everything was fragrant and spiced, Jake's cooking style leaned toward hearty comfort. "I can teach you," he offered, sensing her uncertainty. "We can try cooking together." A small spark of connection ignited between them in that moment, but it quickly faded when May said, "You must think I am useless because I cannot do everything you can." "What?" Jake turned to face her, confusion evident in his expression. "No, that isn't what I meant at all." Misunderstandings hung heavily as their emotions collided unexpectedly. May's frustration surfaced like a tide rising in her heart, recalling past judgments and expectations that always felt like chains holding her back. May faltered, looking down at the floor instead of meeting his gaze. "It feels like I am not fulfilling my role." Jake took a step closer, trying to bridge the gap between them. "You're not just here to fulfill any role. We are partners now," he said firmly, yet gently. "We'll figure this out together." For the first time that day, May looked into his eyes completely. There was sincerity there unlike any she had seen before. The softness in Jake's voice began to melt away some of her anxiety. Could they truly support one another in this uncharted territory? As they settled down for dinner that evening, under dim, flickering lights, an unspoken agreement lingered in the air, a promise of collaboration rather than obligation, building a bridge from misunderstanding to genuine connection that just might lead them toward trust and companionship. As the days passed after their marriage, the whispers among the townsfolk grew louder. It seemed that every corner of the bustling Wild West town was filled with chatter about Jake and Mei Ling. Gossipy voices flowed like the sweet tea served at the local saloon. Some were friendly, while others carried sharp edges. At the diner, a group of women gathered around a table, their faces animated as they discussed the couple over steaming plates of food. "Did you see her?" one woman remarked, her eyes wide with intrigue. "A Chinese widow marrying a rancher on crutches? What a sight!" "Honestly," another chimed in, "it's scandalous. She must be desperate or out of options." The women nodded in agreement, their minds racing with speculation about May's motives and Jake's suitability as a husband. Meanwhile, at the nearby blacksmith shop, a few men gathered to drink coffee and exchange opinions. "I just can't understand why he would take on such a burden," said one man, shaking his head. "She looks frail. What could she possibly do for him?" His words rolled over his friends like thunder, emphasizing Jake's vulnerability and stirring doubts about their union. Across town, old Mr. Thompson sat on his porch watching life unfold before him. He had known Jake since he was a boy, and had seen him grow into a determined rancher despite his disability. "That girl might surprise them all," he muttered to himself, as he watched May tend to their small garden. "She's got spirit. I can see it." Mr. Thompson had witnessed May's determination firsthand. She worked tirelessly to cultivate the land and embrace her new responsibilities. But for every supportive voice like Mr. Thompson's, there were others who questioned whether Mei Ling could truly fit into this community. Children playing nearby stopped to listen as their parents exchanged hushed words about how different she looked compared to them, her skin soft like porcelain, and her hair long and dark compared to their sun-kissed locks. As gossip flourished, so did tensions within May and Jake's home. May often overheard whispers when she ventured into town for supplies, which made her feel more isolated than ever. The weight of judgment pressed down on her heart each time she returned home to Jake, who remained blissfully unaware of the gossip surrounding them. One evening, as they sat at dinner together after a long day's work in the fields, May could no longer hold back her feelings. "People talk about us," she said softly, avoiding his gaze. Jake looked up from his bowl of stew, confusion clouding his features. "What do you mean?" "They think I'm only here because I am desperate, that I am not good enough for you." Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke. Jake put down his spoon and leaned forward earnestly. "You are more than enough for me," he declared firmly, sensing her distress and wishing to reassure her. "I don't want to be seen as just a burden or an obligation," she admitted quietly. Jake reached across the table and took her hand gently in his. "We'll show them who we are, together." In that moment of connection amid uncertainty, they realized that while society might judge them harshly from afar, it was up to them to define their own relationship against the tide of gossip swirling outside their doors. As the sun set beyond the horizon and painted the sky with brilliant colors, they found solace in each other, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead with resilience forged from both misunderstanding and support from their growing bond. One sweltering afternoon, as the sun hung high in the sky, Jake and Mei Ling faced a challenge that would test their growing partnership. They had been working together on the ranch for several weeks, trying to cultivate their small plot of land while battling the whispers from the townsfolk. The summer heat was relentless, and they were beginning to see signs of drought. Water levels in the nearby creek were dropping, threatening their crops and livestock. "Jake, we need to do something about the water situation," May said, her brow furrowed with concern as she examined their parched garden. "I know," Jake replied, his voice steady but laced with worry. "But I can't carry heavy buckets of water to irrigate the fields like I used to." May felt a surge of determination rise within her. "Then we'll find another way. There's got to be a solution," she insisted. With that shared resolve, they set out to explore options for collecting rainwater or redirecting what little flow remained in the creek. As they walked together under the hot sun, May felt an odd sense of camaraderie blooming between them. This was more than just labor. It was a chance for them to truly work as partners. After surveying their surroundings, they decided to build a simple irrigation system using wooden planks and some old barrels Jake had stored away. However, as they gathered supplies near the creek, Jake struggled with his crutches over uneven ground. "I can help you," May urged as she watched him maneuver carefully. "I appreciate it," he replied with a hint of pride in his voice, "but I need to do this myself." Seeing his struggle sparked something in May. She realized that helping him wasn't a sign of weakness, but rather an opportunity for teamwork. "Let me hold on to your arm while you walk," she suggested gently. With hesitation but no other choice, Jake agreed. As they moved slowly together toward the creek, he began to feel less like a burden and more like someone supported by a true partner. When they reached the water's edge, May quickly began working alongside Jake to create channels for water flow, her nimble fingers deftly manipulating materials while Jake provided guidance and direction based on his ranching experience. "See?" Jake smiled briefly as they managed to get water flowing into one of their barrels after hours of hard work. "We did it!" May's eyes sparkled with excitement at their success. "Together," she said proudly. But just then they heard voices approaching from behind them. It was some townsfolk out for an afternoon stroll who had come to witness their efforts firsthand. At first, May's heart sank at the thought of being scrutinized again, but then she felt Jake squeeze her hand reassuringly. "Let 'em watch us," he said softly as he caught her eye. "We're doing this our way." As laughter erupted between them amidst sweat-soaked brows and dirt-streaked faces, those moments became transformative, breaking down barriers built by judgment while strengthening their bond through collaboration. That day marked a turning point in their relationship. No longer were they just two individuals navigating society's expectations. They were a team facing challenges head-on and learning how much stronger they were together than apart. As the weeks passed, Jake and Mei Ling grew more comfortable in their partnership, yet the challenges they faced were far from over. One evening, after a long day spent fixing the irrigation system, they sat on the porch beneath a sky painted with stars. The warm breeze carried scents of fresh grass and wildflowers, creating an atmosphere ripe for vulnerability. "What if this doesn't work?" May softly voiced her fear as she gazed at the horizon. "What if we lose everything we've worked for?" Jake turned to her, sensing her anxiety. "What if it does work? What if we thrive together?" His voice was steady, but he too felt uncertainty lurking in the corners of his mind. "We just need to trust ourselves." May looked at him, surprised by his confidence. "You really believe that, don't you?" "I have to," he replied, revealing the depth of his own insecurities. "Every day I fight against those who see me as weak because of these crutches." As he tapped one on the wooden floor of the porch, a slight tremor ran through him. "But every time you join me out in that field, I become stronger," he continued. This revelation hung heavily in the air between them, allowing May to see Jake not just as a rancher defined by disability or rumors, but as a man filled with determination and spirit. She felt encouraged, but also vulnerable. She wanted to return his strength with equal fervor. "Jake," she started hesitantly, her heart pounding against her chest as she prepared to reveal more of herself. "I hide behind my past to protect myself from disappointment. Being an orphan and losing my husband taught me to guard my heart." Tears brimmed in her eyes as memories flooded her mind. Jake listened intently, holding her gaze steady and reassuring. Here was a moment bursting with potential for both of them, an opportunity for growth rooted in honesty. "May," he said gently, moving closer, "you're not alone anymore." In that moment of connection, May realized how much she had learned from him already. She had been hesitant to share her fears so openly before, but felt empowered to do so now. With each vulnerable exchange came courage. Their bond deepened as they confronted their insecurities together. Resolving to act on newfound conviction, May whispered, "Let's create a plan. We can secure our future together." Days turned into weeks filled with shared labor and laughter. They planted new crops resilient to drought conditions and devised creative solutions for running their ranch efficiently. They began drawing from each other's experiences. May introduced new spices and methods into their cooking, while Jake shared his knowledge about animal care. At times, tension arose when misunderstandings flared up, yet they quickly learned that open communication held the key to clarity. When obstacles came their way, unexpected storms or equipment failures, instead of breaking down under pressure, their resilience blossomed anew. When challenges emerged previously underserved by their personal stories, now became collective tribulations that solidified their partnership. In those moments of adversity, both Jake and May discovered not only strength in one another, but also solidified their trust in themselves. Together, they overcame each hurdle with an unwavering determination, fueled by growth sparked through mutual support. Neither remained merely defined by their pasts anymore. They were forging ahead toward a shared future, colored with hope and success against all odds. As summer drew to a close, dust settled over the ranch like a soft blanket, and Jake and Mei Ling stood side by side, surveying the land they had worked so hard to cultivate. The once parched fields now thrived under their care, a testament to their dedication and partnership. What began as a marriage of necessity had transformed into something deeply enriching. "Look at what we've accomplished," May said, her eyes sparkling with pride as she gestured toward the flourishing crops. "I never thought I could feel this sense of belonging here." Jake smiled, his heart swelling at her words. "Neither did I. We've built something special together." He glanced down at his crutches resting against the fence. "And it's not just about the land. It's about us." They had come a long way from the uncertainty that loomed over them on their wedding day. Through challenges and misunderstandings, they learned to accept each other for who they truly were, discovering strengths they hadn't realized they possessed. Each conversation had broken down barriers, every shared laugh woven them closer together. "Do you remember our first irrigation project?" May chuckled, recalling the unsure way they navigated the task as townsfolk looked on skeptically. "How could I forget?" Jake replied, laughter dancing in his voice. "I think I almost dropped a bucket on your foot." "Oh, you did," she exclaimed playfully, grabbing his arm and leaning against him affectionately. "But look where we are now. You've taught me so much about ranching, and I've introduced you to new recipes." "True," Jake chuckled back. "You have a way with spices that brings life to my meals." With relaxed smiles stretched across their faces, it was clear that acceptance had blossomed between them. They no longer felt burdened by societal judgments or expectations. Instead, they embraced their shared experiences while forging ahead toward an uncharted future. Yet, even as they celebrated their progress, both knew challenges would continue to arise. They had faced adversity together. It brought them closer, but did not erase their past struggles. Still, that bond fueled their optimism and hope for what lay ahead. One late afternoon, sitting together on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple, May turned to Jake with a serious expression. "Do you think we'll be accepted by the town?" Jake considered her question carefully. "We've already built something substantial here. A home, a partnership, a life together. That matters more than what anyone outside thinks." "And what if we share our story?" May asked thoughtfully. "What if we become a part of the community by showing who we really are?" "Then we'll invite them to our table," Jake replied confidently. "They'll see that we're stronger when we stand together." That night under the stars, as moonlight danced upon their land, both felt an exhilarating sense of possibility tinged with quiet resolve. Their acceptance of each other transformed into a bond that would endure the trials of life, a foundation built on love, respect, and unwavering support. In that moment of clarity and connection, Jake and Mei Ling knew they were not merely surviving anymore, they were thriving, together, leaving space for growth, understanding, and hope in all that lay ahead in their journey as partners in life and love.